What if I told you that Drake, once considered an untouchable juggernaut in hip-hop, may have just committed the biggest mistake of his entire career? It sounds outrageous, right? After all, this is the same Drake who spent more than a decade dropping chart-topping hits, amassing an almost cult-like fan base, and reshaping mainstream rap. But trust me, we're on the brink of witnessing a colossal turning point in his legacy, and the ripple effect could be impossible to ignore. I've spent years covering viral topics, from major celebrity meltdowns to under-the-radar controversies, and let me say, this particular fiasco with Drake might just redefine rap beef drama as we know it. So, buckle up. By the end of this breakdown, you'll understand why his latest moves have left fans, critics, and the entire hip-hop community scratching their heads in utter disbelief, and why the fallout could very well be permanent. Drake wasn't always this divisive figure courting legal controversies and industry showdowns. In fact, there was a time, let's call it the glory days, when every single track he touched turned into a chart-breaking phenomenon. From sentimental anthems that made fans swoon over heartbreak to club bangers that dominated parties worldwide, his brand was bulletproof. Even the people who weren't necessarily fans had to admit, this guy delivers consistent hits. But somewhere along the way, small cracks began to appear. For years, rumors fluttered around about ghostwriters, questionable collaborations, and an overarching obsession with mainstream clout over authentic artistry. Whenever these suspicions bubbled up, Drake managed to steer the narrative back in his favor, dropping new songs that deflected criticism, releasing interviews that showcased his charm, and bankrolling marketing strategies that hammered home the idea of him being the go-to hitmaker. Yet, no superstar remains on top without a few bruises. The rap game thrives on competition, and fans have always craved genuine lyricism, hungry for that intangible quality that captures the spirit of hip-hop's roots. It was around this period that Kendrick Lamar began his meteoric rise, challenging the entire industry, and Drake, in a way we hadn't witnessed in years. Little did we know, the seeds of an enormous rivalry were being planted, and Drake's choices in the face of this challenge would become the talk of every hip-hop forum and social media platform for years to come. When Kendrick Lamar emerged with his lyrical prowess, poetic style, and uncompromising approach, it felt like an unstoppable force had collided headfirst with an immovable object. Drake's pop-leaning rap sensibilities and melodic approach catered to a broad audience. Kendrick represented the gritty authenticity of West Coast hip-hop combined with a modern intellectual twist. Fans could sense an undercurrent of tension, whose vision of hip-hop would prevail. At first, the competition seemed healthy, two giants in the genre, pushing each other to new heights. But then came the subtle jabs, the coded lines on records, and the speculation that behind closed doors, both camps were ready for an all-out war. The track Not Like Us, rumored to be a direct shot at Drake, struck a nerve. Instead of retaliating with a vicious lyrical counterattack like rap beef tradition demands, Drake appeared to dodge the direct confrontation. Suddenly, the once untouchable figure looked vulnerable. Memes circulated, critics pounced, and fans started asking, where's the old Drake who used to have sharp responses? The turning point wasn't just the song itself, it was Drake's reaction. His hesitancy to lock horns with Kendrick on Wax felt like an unspoken admission that he couldn't keep up, at least in terms of raw lyrical might. And from that moment on, the aura of invincibility around Drake began to wane. The stage was set for one of the most bizarre spectacles in modern hip-hop, watching a superstar scramble for a way to reclaim his dominance without fully engaging in the one battle that truly mattered. In recent years, the rap community noticed something unusual about Drake's strategy. Instead of dropping fiery disses or surprise collaborations that shifted the game, he leaned into long, cryptic social media posts. It was as if his Instagram captions were more loaded with meaning than entire albums worth of songs. Fans wondered, where's the depth in his music we used to hear? So when Drake posted a lengthy caption declaring, I grew up non-confrontational and always treated this game as a sport where my pen won gold, the internet went wild. Why? Because if there's one thing longtime listeners know, it's that Drake has been locked in countless feuds and subtle barbs since his early days. And claiming he always championed the essence of rap competition felt suspicious, especially when many people recall him famously ducking or downplaying direct challenges. It wasn't just the content of his caption that set off alarm bells, it was the tone. He sounded defensive and oddly self-pitying, like he was painting himself as a misunderstood figure torn apart by an industry out to get him. For a performer who had built an empire off vulnerability in his lyrics, this new iteration was laced with victimhood. Suddenly, it seemed he was rewriting his own history, and fans were asked to ignore all the well-documented instances where he'd thrown shade or tried to undermine rivals. To top it all off, Drake ended his caption with a vague allusion to a next chapter that could leave everyone feeling uneasy. People speculated if this meant a groundbreaking album or a controversial legal move. Little did we suspect it was the latter, and that's where the saga took a dramatic twist. In a development that nobody saw coming, whispers of an impending legal battle emerged. Allegedly, Drake was preparing to sue, or countersue, depending on who you ask, his label and possibly individuals related to the Not Like Us fiasco. Critics and rap aficionados asked in disbelief, is Drake truly trying to litigate his way out of a rap beef? If this rumor holds any weight, it marks a dangerous precedent. Rap beef has traditionally been settled on the mic, bar for bar, diss track for diss track. To watch a rap icon pivot to the courtroom instead of the booth feels like a betrayal of hip-hop's competitive spirit. Fans are torn. On one hand, they've stuck by Drake through questionable moves before. On the other, they've never seen him stoop to such an extreme measure just to sidestep direct confrontation with an MC who outshone him. And here's the kicker. If this legal approach backfires, Drake risks not only losing the case, but tarnishing his credibility forever. Many revered rap battles turned into historic moments for the culture, like the East Coast versus West Coast conflict or Jay-Z versus Nas. They're studied, dissected, and even celebrated. If Drake reduces a rap dispute to a matter of legal documents and depositions, he might become the poster child for everything fans hate. A rapper so detached from the craft that he'd rather call his lawyers than pick up a pen. At this point, the hip-hop community can't help but ask, has Drake forgotten where he came from? Or is he playing a game so big that none of us can comprehend the strategy yet? Whichever it is, the drama intensifies and there's no turning back. Adding fuel to the fire is the undeniable truth that Drake's most recent album was, by his standards, a disappointment. Sure, it may have charted decently, he still boasts millions of fans, but the critical response painted a grim picture. Critics panned it for lacking depth, fresh ideas, or the emotional resonance that once set Drake apart. Fans, for their part, started to sense an absence of genuine inspiration. Songs felt manufactured rather than heartfelt, with an over-reliance on formulaic hooks. Meanwhile, the phenomenon of Drake versus Kendrick Lamar lingered in the background, reminding everyone that he still hadn't matched Kendrick's artistic evolution. Social media buzzed with questions like, where's the hunger? And did Drake get too comfortable at the top? Now, combine that lukewarm reaction with the looming lawsuit drama, and you have a perfect storm. The unwavering loyalty that once defined Drake's fanbase seems to be cracking. Some diehard supporters argue that he can still bounce back with a revolutionary new project. Others believe his priorities have shifted irreversibly, focusing on brand deals, streaming stats, and legal feuds rather than raw musical output. In a culture where authenticity reigns supreme, these perceived missteps could become his undoing. The sense of betrayal runs deep. People feel as though Drake took the easy route, chasing pop success at the expense of creative integrity. And with every new controversy, that core trust erodes just a little more. Drake's recent online statements suggest he's attempting to rewrite how we remember his career. He wants to portray himself as the calm, unassuming guy who never thrived on confrontation and who's been unfairly pushed out of rap's spotlight. But is that accurate? Or even believable? For longtime observers, it's a puzzle. Drake was never shy about lyrical feints and behind-the-scenes machinations. One could point to his feuds with rappers like Meek Mill as evidence of his willingness to tangle when he felt he had the upper hand. The difference now is that Kendrick Lamar presents a unique challenge, a battle-tested lyricist respected across the board for his unwavering artistic vision. Some argue Drake sees this as a threat so big, so insurmountable, that he'd prefer to swerve around it entirely. This leads to a swirl of theories. Is the lawsuit tactic a Hail Mary pass to discredit those who dethroned him? Is it an elaborate ruse to garner sympathy, to make fans believe he's been wronged? Or could it be part of a bigger strategy to remain in headlines no matter the cost? Whichever angle you take, it's undeniable that Drake's attempts to reframe himself as a non-confrontational victim ring hollow for many. The more he clings to this narrative, the more it appears he's rewriting hip-hop's unwritten rules, turning what should be about lyrical sparring into a saga of courtroom drama and social media whining. And that, my friends, could be the biggest tragedy of all. Record labels, producers, and fellow artists are watching this unfold with a blend of skepticism and morbid fascination. Hip-hop thrives on rivalries, some friendly, some fierce. But rarely has a top-tier rapper attempted to handle a career-threatening feud in such a roundabout way. Media outlets smell blood in the water, capitalizing on Drake lawsuit headlines and hip-hop controversy angles. Talk shows debate whether Drake is still relevant, and podcasts dissect his every social media post. The online chatter is relentless, with trending hashtags fueling a non-stop cycle of speculation and hot takes. Behind closed doors, you can bet there are frantic phone calls and tense business meetings. If Drake fails publicly, the financial repercussions could be staggering. He's not just an artist, he's a brand endorsed by corporations, fashion lines, and media conglomerates. A tarnished brand means lost sponsorships, stalled collaborations, and an overall downturn in the cultural cachet he spent years building. Kendrick Lamar, for his part, has remained comparatively quiet, letting the music and the public narrative do the talking, and in many ways, that silence speaks volumes. It's a testament to the confidence Kendrick exudes. He doesn't need to wage a PR war, because he's already established his reputation as a formidable lyricist. Meanwhile, Drake scrambles to salvage his own standing, and the contrast is painfully obvious. It might be tempting to declare Drake's reign over, but hip-hop history has shown us that comebacks are not just possible, but often legendary. We've watched icons fall from grace only to stage triumphant returns with groundbreaking albums or heartfelt public apologies. Could Drake pull a similar comeback? Absolutely, if he prioritizes the art that brought him fame in the first place. Imagine if Drake channeled his frustration into a raw, meticulously crafted album that addresses every accusation, every misstep, and every rumor head-on. If he tapped into the emotional vulnerability he displayed early in his career and merged that with a renewed lyrical sharpness, he might turn even his harshest critics around. But that path would require swallowing his pride, confronting his failures, and, yes, maybe even reconciling with those he's tried to undermine. On the flip side, continuing down the current path, where legal battles overshadow music, where victimhood displaces responsibility, could be the final straw for many listeners. In an era where audiences demand authenticity, the sight of a megastar apparently more concerned with courtroom victories than studio sessions might be impossible to stomach. It all boils down to this: is Drake willing to risk everything in a final attempt to recapture his former glory musically? Or will he throw in the towel and embrace a new career trajectory that relies more on business ventures and carefully scripted social media posts than raw hip-hop grit? The answer to that question will shape not only Drake's future, but also a significant chapter of rap culture in the 2020s. So here we stand, at a crossroads that even the most seasoned industry insiders couldn't have predicted. The man who once held the rap game in the palm of his hand now appears isolated, grappling with lawsuits, label disputes, and fading influence. Whether you're a die-hard fan or a curious critic, there's no denying that the stakes have never been higher. If Drake's gambit flops, if the legal measures and self-victimizing Instagram proclamations fail to win people over, he risks becoming the blueprint for how not to handle a rap beef. But if, by some miracle, he manages to convert this drama into a creative renaissance, we might witness a comeback so epic it redefines the entire conversation. For now, the questions linger. Will Drake's next move be a game-changing album that sets the record straight and reclaims his throne? Or will he double down on the lawsuit route, trying to strong-arm his way back to the podium he insists was unfairly taken from him? And how much collateral damage will the genre itself suffer in the process? As fans watch a once-respected figure appear to value legal retribution over lyrical redemption, whichever path he chooses, one thing remains certain: the name Drake will keep dominating headlines, for better or worse. But how the public, and especially the hip-hop community, remembers him after all this dust settles is up to him alone. Will he remain the chart-topping superstar who shaped modern rap? Or will he transform into a cautionary tale, the artist who forgot that hip-hop's heartbeat is competition, creativity, and authenticity, all things you can't litigate your way around? Let me know in the comments. Is Drake's next chapter going to be a legendary comeback, or the final chapter of a star who flew too close to the sun? If you've stuck around this long, thank you for watching. And don't forget to subscribe for more explosive deep dives into the wildest stories the music world has to offer. Your support keeps this channel alive, and I can't wait to see where this saga heads next. One thing's for sure, it's bound to be unforgettable.